Good morning and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rain Girl TV. I'm Kimberly Williams, and I'm honored to have you with us today. In a world where headlines change by the minute and global events shape our daily lives, we're here to bring you the stories that matter the most. From the latest developments in politics and government to major world events, economic shifts, international affairs, and the issues impacting communities across the nation and around the globe, we've got you covered. Tonight, we'll break down the facts, examine the headlines, and explore the stories behind the news with clarity, insight, and perspective. Whether it's decisions being made in Washington, conflicts and diplomacy overseas, or the events shaping our future, Rain Girl TV is your destination for informed discussion and meaningful conversations. I'm Kimberly Williams, and this is Rain Girl TV, where news meets understanding and every story has a voice. So we have Miss Tracey Lin Miller today with us. She's going to be talking with us about some things. So I would like to welcome Tracey to the interview. How are you today, Tracey?
I'm great, Kimberly. I'm Tracey Miller. I'm over here in Willow Springs, Missouri.
And Tracey, do you remember how we met?
I have no idea. That's been too far in the past.
Okay. Well, I would like to know a little bit about you. You have a number of different degrees, and you're a very educated woman. You were raised in the South, and I remember you very educated when it comes to a lot of history, a lot of background on a lot of different subjects that we sometimes tend to talk about on Facebook. Let's give our audience a little background of who you are and like what education you have.
Okay. I have an associate's degree in general studies. I have a tech degree in automotive mechanics. I have a bachelor's degree in English and creative writing. I have a master's in English and creative writing. The latter two the latter I just received in 1970. I wish. Uh, about 7 years ago, and I was 70 years old when I got it. I'm 77 this October coming. I pretty much decided that I really needed to exercise my brain and decided to get a degree. And I chose writing because I like to write. I do a lot of research and I always have a lot of ideas, and sometimes putting them on paper is easy enough, but in a format that's considered professional, it may be a little bit different. So I decided to choose the English creative writing major for that reason. And I've got about 20 books on hold.
Wow.
And, many ideas constantly going through my mind about what to write. At this stage of the game, I'm trying to determine what I want to be when I grow up. Because it's, it's always an ongoing process, our growth. So it's important not to allow ourselves to stagnate. And especially at this age, even though there's no dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that in my family, genetically, nobody's ever had that. I still wanted to keep my brain active. And thus, I took the bachelor's and the master's degrees courses over a 7-year period in order to do that. However, I think they educated me out of writing because there's so many rules.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas before I used to write easily, I could sit down and the computer and write 10 pages, no problem. Now it's like, well, is this the right format? Is that, and so I questioned myself a lot more than I did before because I don't normally work within the frame of the conventional because that's just me. I just like doing me. So I always want to do things my way.
Well, I mean, the era that you grew up in, and thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, to have that education behind you is awesome. So you have a master's.
Yeah, I have a master's. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and an associate's.
Okay, okay,
And
there we go.
one tech certification.
Okay.
My education is really diverse.
And so I know you grew up in the South and you're a boomer. So growing up in the South, what were some of like the traditions that you were accustomed to growing up?
Okay, I grew up in New Orleans. Family was important.
Hmm.
Religion was important. We went to mass every Sunday. Went to confession. Half my family's Catholic. My mother's side of the family. The other half, my father's side, is Baptist.
Hmm.
But we were raised in Catholicism because that's the rules. You have to raise your children in Catholicism. So we would, as a family, we went to church every Sunday. What? How many generations of us? 3 or 4 generations of us went to church every Sunday, plus all of our like, cousins and aunts and uncles and all that. So there was a lot of family in church on Sundays, and we'd go to one of the other's houses after mass for dinner,
Hmm.
on Sunday dinner, and things of that nature. Education was really, really important in my family. My grandmother taught herself how to read by using the Bible, so she was adamant that I was going to get a good education, and she sent me to private schools, private Catholic schools in New Orleans when I was growing up. And the same, I assume the same with my brothers because, as a kid, it's always first person perspective,
Hmm.
and you don't think about what's happening with your siblings. You're more concerned with what's happening in your world.
Hmm.
And so pretty much, I did grow up in an integrated neighborhood, which was rare in many southern cities.
Hmm.
We're talking, I was born in 1949. In my stage of awareness, I was in the 50s. It was in the 1950s. So I remember, neighbors across the street, down the street, around the corner. There were white kids as well. White is a generalization, but they were Italian, they were French, Europeans, pretty much. My family were my grandparents and great grandparents were property owners.
Hmm.
My mom and my dad weren't. My dad had health issues, mental health issues. So, but I did grow up with the belief property ownership was important.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, because even though my great grandmother was uneducated, I don't know what my dad's mom education level was. She was a wild thing, but
Hmm.
and the men they all belonged to Masons and other male organizations, and the women were pretty much dominant on the home scene. They ran the house. The husbands brought the money home to the women. Pretty much matriarchal.
Hmm.
The women looked out. This is not just my family, but the women in the neighborhood looked out for each other and each other's families.
Hmm.
And I remember them always being compassionate. They didn't wait for somebody to ask for help. They saw a need and they filled it, and things of that nature. So I grew up with uh, I guess, more of a Afrocentric kind of belief system
Hmm.
that women ran things and men supported them in that. And the only time the men were called was when it was like really kids were really messing up. Then it's I'm gonna get your dad kind
Hmm.
of thing. I didn't grow up believing that women had a lower place than men,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the women were respected. This is not saying that nobody cheated or nothing like that, because that was just what people did.
Right.
Those who wanted to do that. I'm just saying that the
Hmm.
family was pretty much intact,
Hmm.
and even though it might have been minorly dysfunctional, my personal family, my mom and dad, because my dad was violent. He was a paranoid schizophrenic,
Hmm.
and he took his anger out on my mom and myself. But for the most part, the early part of my life was really okay.
Was like sweet tea a staple because the Southerners they love the sweet tea.
No, no, we're Creoles. My family's
Okay.
Louisiana Creole, and I
Okay.
don't speak. I don't speak Creole.
Okay.
My mom spoke a little, but my grandmother hoarded the language.
Hmm.
All the old people would talk together. And I learned something interesting about that not long ago too. But anyway, but they didn't teach us children,
Uh-huh.
uh, so I don't have the language sadly.
Hmm.
And I guess that's another reason why I'm not so concerned with skin color, because we range anywhere from the palest pale to
Mm-hmm.
the darkest dark because of the Choctaw. My on my dad's side was Choctaw. I think I can't remember what it is on my mom's side at my great grandparents level. But we are so funny story. One of my cousins, I always thought her dad was Creole.
Mm-hmm.
And not long ago, well, she's passed now, but a few years back, we were discussing our parents, and she was saying, and she says, "Yes, my dad's white." And I said, "No, Uncle Charles isn't white." And she said, "I said, hey," she said, "My dad was white." I said, "No, Uncle Charles wasn't white. Uncle Charles was Creole." I was arguing her up and down that her dad, she didn't know what race her dad was because I had always assumed he was Creole because when they got married, my aunt and my uncle Charles got married back in the late 1920s. It
Mm-hmm.
was illegal for blacks and whites to marry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but they were married and they owned their own home and they lived in New Orleans. And he was a cook on the trains and stuff. But
So,
you know,
so
but it,
what was like the food and hospitality that you guys had? Like, was it fried chicken, gumbo? That's often like really tied
well,
to Asian.
we ate a lot of regular staples, but there was also a lot of Creole cooking,
Mm-hmm.
etouffees. Gosh, I can't even think of them now. There's just so many. The gumbo, like you said, but that wasn't all the time. That was, certain occasions because uh, it it's just the way it was. But you know, there was just they just cooked food, red beans and rice, butter
Sweet
beans and
potatoes
rice.
with
Oh
sweet
yeah,
potatoes,
lot of sweet
greens.
potatoes, canned and baked. Yeah, all
Okay.
kinds of greens.
Uh-huh.
Gosh, you're taking me way back.
Yeah.
I know. But at any rate, yeah, it was pretty much standard fare for New Orleans because a
Okay.
lot of people in the area, of New Orleans that I live were Creoles,
Mm-hmm.
and we visited each other's families, each other part of the family, and they would cook, and it was the same kind of cooking, the
So,
Creole cooking.
so as far as like the families and like the values and the manners that the children have, did they use phrases like yes ma'am and no sir, or like how were you
No,
guys?
no, my parents and grandparents and great grandparents, they never pushed the yes sir, yes ma'am on to us. We didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
respond in that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, there were rules
Mm-hmm.
and that we had to follow. I mean, basic rules, what I consider basic rules in child upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
obey the adults.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't matter if it was your parents or not.
Mm-hmm.
If the lady around the corner saw you doing something wrong and she said stop, you stopped.
Right.
There was no questioning it, because everybody back then, everybody was on the same page with child rearing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody looked out for everybody else's kid, and they had no problem, chastising and reporting to the parents and grandparents what the kid had done. So
Mm-hmm.
children, even though we had a lot of freedom to come and go as we pleased, we were not unsupervised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there was always somebody around that saw what we did, and we had a playground, a very large playground, right across the street from my great grandmother's house,
Mm-hmm.
and a block from my own. And that was another good thing too. Everybody lived close together, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a
And
person in
everybody knew
charge
each
of.
other too.
Well, yeah, yeah, and
Everybody knew each other. Everybody lived in close
what
by.
everybody was related, or spiritually connected, like godparents and so on and so forth. Because when a baby was christened in the Catholic Church, they had
Mm-hmm.
another set of parents, their godparents, stand with them at their
Mm-hmm.
christening.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was always connection. There was always respect, a lot of respect for each other. Even elders didn't disrespect their parents.
Mm-hmm.
If their parents came and say, do something, They just did it. It didn't matter that they had 4 or 5 kids of their own. you know, it was just a matter of the respect of the power of parents back then. Because as far as we knew growing up, you know, the greatest power in the world were our parents, and next to that was God, because we went to church all the time. And the reason I say that, because we knew if we messed up right now, we might die and go to hell sometime in the future.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, our parents were going to get us. So our parents, in that sense, had more power than God in our young lives,
Mhm. So you
which I
so you
find
had a
interesting.
regular like childhood basically growing up in the South. So that means that you was probably connected to being outside a lot because of those hot
Yeah.
days. So did you catch things like fireflies and did you play outside in the
Yeah,
rain?
honeybees, fireflies, grasshoppers, dragonflies.
Mhm.
Yeah, we did all of that, and yeah, that was all part of growing up,
What
and we
about
lived.
fishing? Did you go
I
fishing?
never was a fisher. My
Mhm.
grandfather used to take us fishing all the time,
Mhm.
but I was the one that played on the shore because I don't like killing anything, so I wouldn't kill. The idea of catching,
Mhm.
excuse me, catching and killing a fish was like way out of reach for me. I didn't want. I would stay on the shore and play with the crabs along the bank with a stick or something while my brothers were on the boat with my grandfather. And I
Mhm.
was pretty much a tomboy growing up. Matter of fact, I still am.
Mhm.
But so I did a lot of stuff that the boys did. The Mississippi River was only like 2 blocks from the house. So we'd go on the levee and go behind the levee and play in the water. And those that were brave enough would swim. And, I never did learn how to swim. Um,
Mhm.
but it wasn't because I didn't have the opportunity. It was just because I didn't want to get in the water because I could see the water moccasins
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
river. And I wasn't, the boys didn't care. They right in. And we
Mhm.
were told not to because in one area there were barges along the river bank. There was a big water gap, from the shore to the barges. But if you went under the water and you came up the wrong way underneath the barges, you could die
Mhm.
if you couldn't figure your way out from underneath the barges.
Mhm.
So we were actually told not to go in the river swimming, but that was one of the things that we did as kids. And as I said, there was a playground and there was organized activities for us after school. Mr. Mims, that was the guy that ran the playground, the coach, whatever you want to call him, and he was kind of like a big uncle to all of us because the same kind of thing. Most adults had that kind of position in our lives. And so, on holidays like Halloween, there would be a whole bunch of Halloween stuff to do at the park. I mean, we still trick or treated. Back then they weren't poisoning kids and sticking needles in candy and all that kind of
Like
craziness
they
like
do
they're doing
now.
now.
Yeah.
We just go out, we just come back with a bag of candy. Everybody have big bags of candy because people were really generous to the kids. Then
Mhm.
we'd end up at the playground and there would be apple dunking and all
Oh my
kind of.
God, the apple dunking. I love that around the Halloween time. It's
Yeah,
apple
yeah, yeah. For
dunking.
Halloween, that's the
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff we did.
Mm-hmm.
And at Easter, there was the giant Easter egg hunt with eggs all over the park. I mean, it was a pretty big park. It was a huge, a big block square. Okay, so it was a pretty big playground. There was a baseball diamond and basketball court and swings, a merry-go-round and jungle gym and all of that. And like
Mm-hmm.
I said, it was right across the street from my great grandmother's house. So from the time I was a toddler, I was walking into that playground across the street by myself
Mm-hmm.
because there was not a lot of traffic, and I was allowed to just go from as far back as I could remember, and I would go over there and I swing because they had baby swings and they had, all that stuff. But, just even if I wasn't swinging, I
Mm-hmm.
was, picking the clover and the bees and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
so we had a lot back in the day. We had a lot of freedom to explore which is really contradictory to what's going on now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a girlfriend a few years back. She had her daughter had a little daughter, and the baby had no shoes on, and she was having a ball
Mm-hmm.
walking in the grass,
Mm-hmm.
and her mom comes running out there. Oh, no, 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 don't, your feet got to get dirty. Your feet got to get dirty. And so she wants to put socks and shoes on this kid. And I'm like, leave that baby alone. She needs that sensory experience.
Yeah.
No, no, I don't want my daughter to be walking. They don't know what kind of germs. I'm like, oh my God, that's why all these kids are sick now.
You know that you're bringing up a really great point, and we got to take a commercial in a few moments. But the sensory, the soles on the shoes, has that prevented us being from being connected to the earth? I know they say since we wear shoes and different things now, and we don't walk barefoot on the ground anymore, that we're not as connected as we should. Do you know anything about that? Because I hear that a lot, that our senses
Yes,
change.
yes. Well, because your body has billions of nerves,
Yeah.
and they all need stimulating for your brain to be trained
Mm-hmm.
to all the other parts of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, that's one of the things I'm having with my health now. My brain is not connecting to the other parts like it should.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I have a free way to live. I mean, when I was even as an adult, I'll go outside and stay in barefoot in the rain because that's the time when you cleanse your body
Mm-hmm.
of all the negative energy. You ground yourself, even when it's not raining. But I mean, even if you believe in the use of crystals and stuff, if you put your crystals on the dirt on the ground when it's raining, it cleanses them. You don't
Wow.
need to go through all those elaborate processes that a lot of spiritualists use, and especially if it's thundering. I love going out after because the feel of the air on your skin is totally different than at any other time. I mean, you can literally. Well, I'm hypersensitive to a lot of things, so I can feel the tingle of the energy in the air and the cleansing it provides. A matter of fact, when I was living in Ruston about 15 years ago, I would come out in my driveway when it rained, and I would just dance in the rain, in my driveway. My neighbors like, that old ass woman.